Welcome everyone to Awesome Truth, a wrestling book club. I'm your host Steve Semino, and with me, as always, is my co-host Walt Schwank. Hey, Walter.
Hello, Steven. How's it going?
My friend, it is going very well. We are back on Awesome Truth, and today, Walt, we are returning, I guess, to the world of YouTube-based wrestling documentaries. I didn't really know this was a thing, although I guess it makes sense given that we have done one of these before. More on that a little later. But while we hunted down, you hunted down, I should say, a what are they calling themselves? Media startup, wrestling media startup called Spotfight that is putting together documentaries on wrestling. And we watched the epic story of the Shield. Walt, do you want to talk about how you stumbled upon this and why you thought it'd be a good choice for us?
Oof. Short of sharing my internet history with our audience. Now, I think my algorithm, thanks to our recent episode watch along of The Shield versus the Wyatts from circa 2014, my YouTube's was like, hey, if you like wrestling and you like The Shield, you might like this niche wrestling media startup in Germany's take on the Shield's history. So I go, you know what? I do like this, and I will watch this for a little bit. And that's how I stumbled onto the spot fight page. I
It
keep
is weird because I want to say you want to say
fast.
Spot Fest, right?
I
But
really want to say Spotfest. Um, it begged a few questions. One is another YouTube documentary series on wrestling, and two, a wrestling media startup in 2025 exclusively doing podcasts and YouTube content. All right,
yeah,
weird.
it is I mean, who knows how their business model works if it even is officially a business model. But obviously, if you watch this documentary, which we did because obviously, like you said, we just covered the Shield six-man tag with the Wyatts, which was great, and because this came out only a few weeks ago, so it's very new and very fresh. So it made a lot of sense for us to tackle this one. But when you watch this, it is it's a series of clips of matches, which of course makes sense, and talking head footage. So it is in that sense very similar to a WWE documentary. The obvious issue here is this is not a WWE company by any means. This is a German-based wrestling media startup, as we said. So using all this talking head footage, some of which does seem to be from third party, shoot video type thing, or just assorted interviews that are not under the purview specifically of WWE. Some of them are just clearly ripped from DVDs and other documentaries. So that's a little
Hmm.
shaky, and it makes sense. And I'm sure it's still work. Like it's not like it's easy to just grab those and put them all together. There's a cohesiveness and a thoughtfulness to this for sure. It's not slapdash by any means, but it is interesting that they just said, "Oh, well, we're gonna help ourselves to all this footage," and I guess we'll see what happens after that.
It's funny when you watch a WWE produced doc. Like, there's a lot of them that will, go, bend or blur the lines of reality and the fantasy that is pro wrestling universe, and the narratives and kayfabe and yada yada yada. And so it was really funny watching this documentary where you're hearing, you're seeing this filmmaker, for lack of a better term, take clips from WWE rivals of Roman Reigns talking about his rivalry with Seth Rollins, but taking it out of context to then support a claim or tell a piece of their personal story when that has nothing to do with what the original intent of was when they recorded those bites for the WWE rivals, where it's all on screen presentation of the rivalry and very little behind the scenes. So it's kind of a nice Uno reverse card of stealing from WWE to tell the actual story that they don't want you to tell, but using their clips to tell it.
Yep, and you touched on a great thing too that we hadn't brought up yet is they are telling their meaning Spotfight. Spotfight is telling their version of the story. You would not be surprised to hear as a listener that that is sort of the internet wrestling community side of the story. So there's a lot of rumors that are probably like, Wrestling Observer, Meltzer, Wade Keller type rumors. So they're probably well sourced rumors. They're probably not total bullshit, but who knows? They don't necessarily cite sources, but they do constantly drop, tidbits about backstage. Seth Rollins got into a fight with Big Show and he upset Ryback and they had a lot of heat. Like you can tell they revel in using a lot of those terms, a lot of that wrestling jargon, and in just dropping all the little infos they picked up over the years of why the Shield were disliked, why they were liked, trouble in the ranks, when they got frustrated with each other, et cetera, et cetera. Which is, but which sometimes there was stuff that seemed legit, and I was like, okay, like, oh wow, I'd heard a little bit about that, and I was like, oh, that's interesting to know where that sits in the broader timeline of their careers. I didn't hate having all that, but a lot of the time, most of the time, I feel like you're like, okay, like chill, man. Like that's great. I'm glad you have an Observer subscription. I'm glad you are reading, pyro fucking rumor roundups all over the internet, but I'm not sure this is the most objective version of the story. You are certainly letting your own thoughts and your own speculation bleed into what is ostensibly presented as like the true story of the Shield.
Yeah, well, you really had an issue with that Seth Rollins Big Show tidbit.
Yes, I cited that before we started recording as well. I just found it to be such
All
a
right, we
weird,
get
like
it.
Big Show's. I don't know. I just thought it was an egregious example of like calling out someone. Like Big Show is not relevant to any of this. Like it's so weird to name drop Big Show in the Shield documentary. That's why I did a double take because I was like, leave Show's name out of this. Like, what did Show do? He's
For
fine.
for what it's worth, I had never heard that story before. So for me, if it is true, it is interesting. But
Yeah.
I think you're right in a sense that we're kind of creating a new timeline based on in-ring achievements times Meltzer reporting equals like I don't know what that really equals. I think though that after watching this, it became very clear to me that if we are ever going to tell a Shield timeline history of docu style presentation of the facts that went from inception with the tried and true and overtold Chris Hero anecdote to what we ended up seeing with these three. It should never be done by WWE because while I agree with you that sometimes I had questions about the decisions made in this particular documentary, I think this was a much better presentation, generally speaking, than anything I think that coming out of the the mothership, so to speak, of WWE production and entertainment. Because I don't think you're touching any of these stories.
Yeah, it is, and their story is, boring in one sense, which is they teamed up. They if they had any kinks, they worked them out pretty quickly. They were very successful as a stable. They were, became borderline main eventers. They broke up. They became legitimate main eventers, and now they're three of the five biggest stars in wrestling. So it's like there's not a ton of like bumps in the road there. There's not a ton of trials and tribulations, and certainly in a sanitized version, I don't think unless they invented a bunch or truly opened the coffers and shared the quote unquote true backstage stories of what happened, maybe there would be. But objectively, what we see is about three very good wrestlers who got along pretty well and rose the ranks and did great. So there's just not a ton of meat there. So I think you're right that if there was a sanitized version, it probably would just tell that story. And I just don't really think that really is very appealing.
See, it's funny because I kind of disagree a little bit there because, and which is why I would love nothing more than to completely dunk on this. But honestly, I kind of I enjoyed this for what it was. I'm not going to sit here and tout it like it's the greatest piece of media I've ever watched, but it was nice to kind of just get a timeline of the events that unfolded with the Shield, having just talked about them and how we're constantly reminded of them even today with Roman and feuding with CM Punk for this upcoming WrestleMania season. It's like it was fun just to relive all that because there's so much I forgot. And it is a story of ups and downs because they reminded me of, for example, Gas Mask,
Oh
Dean
God,
Ambrose.
how the fans were so stinky. You couldn't be near those stinky fans.
Yeah, and honestly, using the bites of him in one of some shoot interview, or maybe it was the Beyond the Ropes, or the overseas interviews with Kenny McIntosh. That series, I can't remember what it's called, but
Mhm.
you know, I hearing him just talk about like, oh God, yeah, him making me do this gas mask thing right after Roman announces his leukemia is back was the most truly terrible thing ever.
Yeah.
Suffering succotash too was
Yes. I was so happy your favorite your besides the beanstalk with the beanstalk with Big Show. Your two
yeah.
favorite Roman moments from his babyface era.
But I forgot about the suffering succotash in a sense
It's
that
so
I
bad.
I
That
forgot
clip
that
speaks for itself too. Like that's really all you need to show if you're saying Reigns went through some trials and tribulations as an emerging good guy, and you're like, okay, I get it. There we go. Like, yeah, that sucks ass. Like no questions here.
yeah. I forgot that he was feuding with Seth at the time too. So for him to deliver that line to
Oh, that was
Seth,
that was that was that wasn't show. That was Seth.
well, the Beanstalk was Show,
Sure, of
but the Suffer
course.
and Succotash was Seth.
Wow, I did not remember
So,
that either. I didn't even notice that from the replay. Wow.
which is why they probably used that one versus the Beanstalk
Yes,
because,
and they didn't want to
well,
sully Big Show. They'd already drug Big
they're,
Show through
they're
the
already
mud. You
sullied
know.
Big Show. But anyway, I was reminded of these like hard, and those are just a few of this many not great moments that these three endured after the breakup, which was like 10 years worth of bad moments for
Yeah,
them, different
absolutely.
ways. So,
And you're right. I mean, I didn't hate this either. I will say that. It wasn't like I just have a natural, I think I have a natural skepticism when I watch YouTube clips or, like even professionally done YouTube footage that isn't, that comes from someone I've never really heard of and don't have a ton of background on. I just sort of assume they're not trolling, but they're like just trying to make a name for themselves, and perhaps with not including journalistic integrity and any sort of integrity in the process. So when I hear them citing, and I don't want them to say like Dave Meltzer report, like they don't need to name drop the reporters who have broke these stories in the documentary. That would be clunky and weird. But at the same time, when they're just saying this happened, this happened, this happened, and it's uncited, unsourced rumors about backstage confrontations or whatever, my guard just goes up again. It's like, okay, like, I guess, like maybe that happened, maybe it didn't. Like, I have no reason to doubt you, Spotfight, but I have no reason to believe you either. And so I just sort of, I naturally wonder what their end game is with that sort of thing. So when they're telling me all these things happened, I'm like, I guess, like, I don't know, like, and now the WWE is obviously they're untrustworthy in their own way because it's they're trying to give it the corporate spin. So that's the other side of the equation. Is they have their own angle whenever they present the objective truth. But yeah, when I watch this though, like I do like hearing these guys' story. Like you said, I do like being reminded of how much they messed up the Dean Ambrose character. The stuff about Seth and Triple H that seemed a little more legit because they had footage where those people do voice those same things about their fissure and then them coming together. So like there is elements of it I really did enjoy that I think added to the story that, as you noted, maybe would not have been included in a more official version of it.
yeah, it's weird because they did talk about that in a WWE doc. And it's probably one that we've covered too, now that
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
thinking
remember.
about it.
Do you remember that the Seth Triple H stuff?
Maybe it was an FCW, maybe it was a doc, maybe it was some other, I don't know, Seth doc, Untold
Yeah,
doc
because
or
there's
something.
some Seth. There's a ton of Seth is hard to say. Seth pissy baby footage in this. Like he's the pissiest baby ever. And
With the trucker hat, the flat brim trucker
yes,
hat. I'm like,
he
Jesus,
just
what version of Seth is this?
it's funny though. It's because I've always we've talked about him being a pissy baby many times on this show, and it's just funny that like I'm sure he's better now, like from the Becky book and everything. Like he seems like he's a chiller guy, but it's funny to learn that when he first came up, he was just the pissiest baby in the world, and he liked CM Punk, and CM Punk was his idol, and you're like, there we go, the two pissiest babies of the last 20 years. Of course they were, buddy buddy, idol, and looker upper too.
Yeah, I wasn't I wasn't particularly shocked to hear that Seth Rollins came into the the training center day one and be like, "Yeah, you're doing this wrong." It's like Tarantella was like, "Shut the fuck up,
Yeah.
bro."
And I'm sure Terry Taylor was an asshole too. I don't think it was probably asshole on asshole at that point.
Yeah, I mean, there are no winners of this feud, but
Yeah. But that's good stuff though. That's fascinating too. Like, because that's a weird. That's the era of NXT right before it becomes televised feeder system, but also like better, more entertaining. Like its own little universe. NXT getting publicity and really making stars and all that. Like he was sort of the one of the last. Him and like Big E and a couple other guys were the real like standouts at that point. And I can see why he was like, get me out of this. Like it's not as satisfying as it came to be. And given what his personality seemed like at the time, I could see how he was chomping at the bit to go up and do something big, which he ended up doing to his credit.
Yeah, and I'm sure that a lot of the big show heat, we'll call it for it stems from those times of Seth being pissy in Full Sail and in the FCW and things like that. Because there was a time before the Shield that Seth Rollins existed as a wrestler in developmental, and so just putting it all on a timeline sometimes, even if it's not 100% accurate, still allows me to just see it all in one place because you think about the Shield and it's like, yeah, they had some NXT time, but really they were like from this date to this date, and then they break up, and then there's all this other shit that happens. And so like seeing all these things like laid out does give me a different perspective sometimes to like what the Shield meant, why maybe they weren't popular backstage, why they had to stick together even more, like we hear in the Moxley book, like how they were just such they made every decision together. They were kind of like their own mini union,
Hmm.
and as a result, they super succeeded because they stuck together. And so all these things now in the context of this like timeline make really like is in my face and allows me to really see it more clearly than remembering all these shoot interview moments or reading these excerpts from books in a vacuum, because it's just so you just lose context at some point when you get this information differently.
Sure, absolutely. And it is also, to see the evolution of them both in, Vince's eyes as you can sort of tell by their pushes and their successes and failures. Because at the beginning, it seems like Ambrose was the mouthpiece and sort of the de facto leader. He was the one with the singles belt, and then Seth and Roman had the tag belt. So you're like, okay, it's just by that alone, you sort of get a sense of who the main guy is. And then obviously by the time Ambrose leaves and becomes Moxley, Vince is clearly done with this guy. He's like, this guy's a goofball. He's a weirdo, and probably didn't help that Moxley seems like, as he says in his book, like he had substance issues. They hinted that in this too. Like he was getting fed up personally. He was probably going through it, in other ways. There's just a lot going on with him, but clearly Vince was done with him, and it's so interesting to see the heights that Seth and Roman go to, and where Moxley sort of gets left behind. After he wins the belt in that one big night they say, where they all three basically I think had the belt on one night, which is cool. And then all of a sudden, and then soon after that, Dean's out the door. So just to see their favor in Vince's eyes, because when they were the Shield, you can tell, even though they're pissing people off, you can tell they were doing the brass ring shit that Vince loves. You can tell they were. I think Vince does not mind if you're pissing everyone off, if you're also selling merch, putting on good shows, standing up for yourselves. I think that's Vince's like dream young wrestlers. So I think for a while there, all three were certainly checking his boxes because they were go out there and just being, productive jerks. And I think that's really his cup of tea.
What's kind of funny is why didn't these three main event at WrestleMania?
In like a triple threat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would have been such a logical
They
thing.
they made evented a battleground that I went to.
I was gonna say, yeah, yeah. Instead, they were like a throwaway
Yeah,
paper
and in your
view.
house in Washington D.C. like 8 years ago, whatever. That was
Yeah,
a great. That was the most. That was the biggest B grind of all time, too. Do you remember that card? It was Shield triple
absolutely
threat.
not.
It was Shield triple threat. It was, I believe, Sammy KO, the first match they ever had on the main roster, and it was
Wow.
Bailey's debut on the main roster.
Was she in a tag with Sasha?
Yeah, so it was a
Okay.
mystery partner, and everyone's like, and Sasha goes out to the ring and she's like laughing, she's like almost crying because she's so happy, and then Bailey's music hits
Uh,
and everyone freaks out. It's great.
wow.
But
What
it
a
was just
what a
such like
time
a, it
to
was
be
just such like
alive.
what a stacked B ground. Like that's a WrestleMania style card at Battleground. It was so strange.
We need to do a revisit of
I believe
Battleground.
that also was Enzo, Big Cass, and Cena 6-man versus like League of Nations or some shit too. But like that was
Yeah.
arguably the height of Enzo and Big Cass's popularity too.
Team
Also
Messina.
cited in this documentary, Enzo was mean, and Roman told him to get the fuck off the bus.
Right. It was probably the biggest babyface moment Roman's ever had.
Yes, it was.
On
So
camera or off camera.
telling Enzo to eat shit is a great way to score points with the boys.
Literally, no one can disagree with this man.
Even Big Cass is probably like,
Uh,
you know what? Let's take him. You know, it's good. We're good.
so, Shield documentary
Yep.
worth sort of a half watch.
Yes, I was gonna say
Uh,
too. Even beyond just this one being decent, as someone who had the algorithm recommend this to them? Are you gonna watch some other Spotfight documentaries? Are you gonna watch There's Dark Side of CM Punk and there's Dark Side of Seth Rollins. So the amount
Ooh,
of
that actually
dark
sounds pretty
side in
good.
the name is
I mean, it's hard to watch anything Dark Side themed that's not Dark Side of the Ring, except that maybe I would. Dark Side of Seth Rollins sounds like more Big Show fights
yeah.
backstage, which does intrigue me for
If
some
that's
reason.
catnip for you, then yeah, that might be what you got to turn to.
I would put this on in the back because, sometimes on YouTube or if I'm between meetings or something, I'll just go through shorts and it'll pull up a bunch of like bullshit.
Mhm.
Mostly Dragon Ball Z, mostly wrestling, sometimes the Eagles Super Bowl highlights from a couple of years ago. Just clearly nothing, Breaking Bad clips, like nothing like that is actually of importance, but like I will stop and watch these things on occasion.
Yep.
So instead of that, I would put this on and just press pause, listen, like almost treat it like a podcast. Like I don't need to sit there and rewatch the Big Show stepping through the table, or I don't know, or whatever Big Show highlights there could possibly be. Yeah. So I would probably put this on again.
Yeah, and that
How
makes
do
sense.
you feel?
I was gonna say, and we mentioned this up top, and I want to bring it up before we wrap. If you are comparing this to another example, which is in my related feed right now on the YouTube page, it's the Better Than You, the CM Punk versus MJF feud, covered in our archives, awesometruth.libsyn.com, by the channel Outside Interference. So we did that a couple years ago on this pod, and it was, it's obviously another cited example of a, YouTube wrestling documentary. And that's one where I would say you need to watch it more closely because, like you said, there's no narration, there's no voiceover, it's not put together. It's literally just a collection of clips showing the timeline of the feud, like interviews, segments, matches, etc. Like it hangs on, just a well edited together, hype package, a 47-minute hype package about, showing you the highlights of this feud. I think we would both agree, at least certainly I shouldn't put words in your mouth, that is better, that what they did is better, and it's way more popular too. It's years older, but it has 3.5 million views on YouTube. This one is new, it has 32,000. And then the other ones he's done, they've done 350,000, 162,000. I have no frame of reference for how successful that is on YouTube or not. So that could be good. It sounds like it's fine to mediocre. But I will just say, as much as I think that the use cases you described here of just putting this on in the background are great. But if I were to invest my time in any of these things and actually sit down and watch it, or like, pull it up on my TV and have it be, something I was literally sitting down and watching, it would something like the Outside Interference videos are ones that I would treat with a little more dignity and a little more focus, Whereas this I feel like is just a killing time. I gotta send an email and I want something to listen to while I do it.
The outside interference, I think, is better for different reasons. They're not the same, which is, I think ultimately what I would caveat with comparing the two. But yeah, I mean, I think outside interference takes that extra step. It's not like making a commentary. It's like here's the feud from soup to nuts, and done and edited and put together in an artful way. Like it's great to relive a feud that way, especially the ones that were covered, which were pretty iconic at the time with MJF and
Oh, of
CM
course, and
Punk.
there's the Hangman one too. I forgot about that. We covered that one as well, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
We
that
did
was
two of
excellent.
these. Oh, that's
It's
great.
like,
Yeah, and that was like an episode. I'm looking now. Curiously enough, those were about as successful as these are too. So he really hit his. The only one he did that like totally blew up was the Punk MJF one. So that's just a
well,
fascinating
well,
little aside.
well, the The Hangman one was in six
Parts.
parts. Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you
But
add
even
up
then,
all
they,
the
they all had about
parts.
100,000 views.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, well then.
So, but
Yeah.
I'm just intrigued that because I would have thought, like you said, I know that that was a big deal too. But obviously, it was one of those like that was probably like his blank check, and then or like his guarantor, and then his blank check was the CM Punk one, which did so well. So
Yeah. So I agree with you though. Outside interference was like obviously worth us covering more than once.
sure. And we don't need to compare.
And
They're not apples to apples, but it is just like I said. If you're going broadly, like YouTube documentaries, they are both YouTube wrestling
that
documentaries.
being said, we're still waiting for that Cody installment
Yeah,
of outside interference, which will never come.
listed as
So
abandoned project in the title. So he is, and there's not other ones. He hasn't done anything since the CM Punk MJF one, which is fascinating. I
right.
wonder what happened to him or where he went. I know we had some. I won't go into details, but we had some light interaction with him at one point, and it stinks that that never went anywhere because that was some good stuff.
I
But
thought he was too busy to do the podcast. He was just busy making more of these, and turns out that wasn't the case.
yeah.
And also left a giant hole in the YouTube wrestling documentary slash
Oh, he works
content.
at First We Feast now. Is that's Hot Ones, right?
I think so,
Well,
yeah.
maybe he just got a job with Hot Ones. He's like, I'm good with my wrestling documentaries.
Screw this wrestling thing.
I think he lives in Brooklyn if you want to go say hi.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
go
shut
pop
up my
by.
window, see if he hears me. I guess.
Outside interference guy.
Yeah, I'll do that right after this. We
Yeah,
stop
I will
recording this.
say I don't think this was any great shakes. Like I'm not going to remember this in a month, but I think for an episode, for something that was you were like, hey, let's give this a shot. Like I don't dislike it at all. I think it has its flaws, but it is like I said, it is well intentioned and well put together. Like it is not. They clearly didn't make this in like an hour. Like they spent a lot of time and found a lot of footage and tried to tell their version of the story. And like I appreciate that. Like that's good. Like we've seen professionally made things that are more slapdash and shitty than this. So I
Mhm.
appreciate the care went into it. If we're gonna watch it, like I'm happy that it was, that they clearly tried to make it the best they could.
Yeah, I will make that note and say that out loud. It is not easy to make one of these things because they are mountains of footage and pulling all this shit from the internet and from this network or from YouTube or like this isn't truly a documentary in the sense that it takes hours to cull through footage to find the right bite to tell this part of the story and these visuals from decades of WWE filming these guys for every week for hours. So, you know, we talk about this like, oh, these internet guys is so cute. They're putting together this like piece of content. It's like this is a full production.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, yeah, I mean, obviously everything we talked about earlier is the reason why it is a kind of rinky dink operation. But like ultimately, there is a
There's
level
been
of polish
rinkier,
on
there's
this.
been dinkier.
Yeah, yeah. This isn't the rinkiest dinkiest.
Exactly.
So good
That's a
job by
good way
them.
to. I think that's a good way to sum it up. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And and it gave us something to talk about on the hit show Awesome Truth. So honestly, that's the most important
Mm.
thing of all. Is we were able to create content about content.
I
So
look forward to hearing them talk about us being the rinkiest, stinkiest podcast. But you
we'll
know,
see if we get a notice in the internet ecosystem. Probably not, but
yeah. It'll be a real spot fight.
that's all right. Well, if you want to hear us talk about previous wrestling documentaries, including the outside interference ones, you can find our archives at awesometruth.libsyn.com for episodes old and new. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are delivered. We are there. Walt, great to talk to you again about this. Delightful to watch a little doc. 47 minutes or whatever it was. That's a great length, too. The other CM Punk one, 80 minutes. Now we're talking feature film. I don't know if I have
Mm,
the guts for that, but 47. Wow, that's the sweet spot.
great.
Yep.
Yeah, more to come.
We
Well,
did.
maybe we'll review more of these one
we'll
day.
we'll see. We'll see how much other stuff we can find. We'll see how long we can put off reading a book, right?
Yep.
Thank you all so much for listening, and remember, the truth will set you free.